Okay, good evening, everybody. We're going to go ahead and get the meeting started. Welcome to the Community Consolidated School District Board of Education meeting this evening, Wednesday, November 5th, 2025, 6 p.m. here at Frederick School. I need a call to order, please, with a roll call.
Matt.
Here.
Braden.
Here.
Nash.
Here.
Halverson.
Here.
Hume.
Here.
Miller. Here. And Eaton.
Okay, thank you. We do have quorum. Please join me for the pledge. Thank you, everybody. I need a motion to approve this evening's agenda, please.
I'll move. I'll second.
Okay.
Miller.
Aye.
Mack.
Aye.
Halverson.
Aye.
Braden.
Aye.
Hume.
Aye.
And Nash.
Aye.
Okay, thank you. The agenda is approved. Do we have any public comments signed up down at the end there? No public comments, okay. We do have an amazingly celebratory recognition this evening with the GMS cross country team. So welcome to the board meeting this evening. We're very glad to have you here and to celebrate you. And I believe I'm handing it over to Mrs. Tengler. Is that correct? Yes. Okay. Yeah. Press that button there. Yep.
We're talked in here before. Okay. First of all, thank you so much, Dr. Glitman, board members, for having us. We're so honored and grateful to be here today. I know that Coach Friesma and the coaches are going to celebrate the athletes, but I would like to just take a minute and celebrate our amazing coaches as well. They stepped into this coaching position, and I know they were all a little nervous with 74 cross-country athletes to start with. We lost a couple with some injuries, but you guys did an amazing job. And I want to thank you for that. Calm and caring, and just your demeanor with the kids was just so wonderful with them, and I think that really means a lot and gives them something to look forward to every day, which I want to talk about this little panther for 2 seconds, something that they came up with, and they honored the athletes with a panther. They had a big panther and little panthers, and they gave panthers out for PRs. We did special things with attendance. Athletes nominated athletes. So then they went home with a panther that they got to keep that just kind of like, for them, it just meant something very special that they were honored with this for their accomplishments and what they did. So I want to give a special one to head coach Friesma. So you can have a special panther for yourself, and then I'll turn it over to you. And congratulations, all our athletes. I've seen some of you 5th, 6th, 7th, and 8th, and it's always so great to see you as you come from Frederick to GMS. Thank you. Of course. Thank you. You are.
Could I have all the coaches and the runners come and join me at the podium? First, I'd like to thank the board for recognizing and honoring these incredible scholar athletes on such a successful season. A couple quick highlights of our season. We started, I can't go over all the meets because we had a very packed schedule, but the first real kind of exciting meet, I think, was on Saturday, September 6th at the 2nd annual Vicky Piela Invitational, where our boys team finished in first place in the 2-mile race. And we had individual medals in that 2-mile race to Christian, Jeremy, Isaac, Sean, Tyler, Isaiah, Theo, Evelyn, Cece, and Mackenzie. So it was an incredible way to start the race, or start the season. I didn't know what to expect, and so I was like, oh my goodness, we're gonna have a year here. The next one that was really exciting was on Monday, September 8th, so it was real rapid fire this season. We went to the Lakes Euro Challenge at Lakes High School. It's one of the largest meets of the season with over 20 schools and 400 runners competing. Our boys team earned 3rd place, and our girls team earned 7th place out of 20 schools that attended. At this race, there's, over 400 runners, and the top 10 in each of the races received these special finisher t-shirts, and that was awarded to Christian, Evelyn, and Cece. On Tuesday, September 30, we had our final home meet at GMS. It was a very special day for all of us, being the last race for a lot of our 8th graders. The girls' team finished in first place, and the boys' team finished in first place, so the way you'd like to end the year at home. And then we were really excited about our chances at the conference finals at Big Hollow, and that was on Monday, the 6th of October. The girls' varsity team earned 3rd place with top 15 medal winners Evelyn, who got 1st place at conferences, and Cece, who got 8th place. The boys' varsity team finished in 2nd place. Top 15 medals were awarded to Christian, Jeremy, Isaiah, and Isaac, who are here with us today. Then we went to sectionals, which is very exciting at McHenry. The boys' team finished in 3rd place out of the 15 schools that competed, and we qualified for the state meet Saturday, October 18 in Bloomington. Along with the team earning 3rd place in a trip to the state meet, individual medals were earned by Christian, who got 3rd place, and Jeremy, who got 8th place at sectionals, I'm sorry. The girls' team finished in 5th place out of 15 teams, and individual awards were earned by Evelyn, who got 1st place at sectionals. Congratulations. And Cece, who got 6th place. Yeah, absolutely. Evelyn and Cece joined the boys' team in representing Grayslake at the state cross-country meet on Saturday, October 18. So it was an incredible day for everybody. On behalf of Coach Forrest and Coach Stahoviak, we just want to thank all of the scholars for an incredible season. We already miss running with you, and we can't wait until next season so we can continue to work on running fast and running together. A big thanks to Ms. Tengler. We couldn't do it without you. And to all the parents who supported their runners. And thanks again to the board for recognizing these incredible athletes.
Congratulations on an amazing season. We do have some awards for you up here to pass out in a moment, but does any board member have any comments or questions they'd like to share or anything? We're very proud of you, and thank you for being here this evening and representing Grayslake 46 really, really well. Bravo. We've got some ribbons for you up here. If you want to come up here, we can pass those out.
Okay. Okay, parents and students, I did tell you that I would give you a moment for a quiet and graceful exit if you want. We understand if you don't want to stay for the rest of the meeting. You're welcome to stay.
But
Students from Central, I think you have to stay.
that's right.
We'll talk to you in a moment. Thanks for being here, everybody.
Yeah, you can sit more in the middle if you want. I was going to officially welcome our guests from Grayslake Central High School, and now that you're the only ones in the room besides us, welcome to the meeting. We'll keep plugging along. You might need a picture, I think, at some point. Yeah. Okay, that moves us to the presentation for this evening's meeting, which is the student assessment data. And I will hand that over to Mrs. Gluck.
Thank you. Good evening, board. We are here tonight to talk about the student assessment data. I want to point out that I typically do this presentation later in the school year, so usually around January. The Illinois School Report Card, as you may know, became live last week on October 30th. and there were some pretty significant changes in terms of proficiency benchmarks. So we wanted to move it up earlier in the year so we could make sure we explained all of those to you. So that's why I'm talking about this now, and happy to explain a lot about our student assessment data. So I want to talk about our mission, where this fits with the data that I'm going to share with you. And the first is that it's all about empowering our learners. So while this is about our proficiency for our students, it's also looking at how are we ensuring that our students are meeting our state standards and meeting the benchmarks that the state has put in place for us. So we want to make sure that we are doing what we need to do, and that we are seeing the growth that we need as well. And so it's empowering us as a district and as our staff to be able to, as learners. And then as we think about what are we doing within our classrooms, and I'm going to talk a little bit about some of our student group data, that's also about how are we ensuring that there's equity within our classrooms. And what are we doing to ensure that all of our students are getting what they need, whether it be some kind of enrichment or extension or some sort of extra support. And so we'll talk about all that as I dig into the data. So there are 3 outcomes for today. The first is that I want for everyone to understand the changes that were made by the state in order to right-size proficiency benchmarks. And I'll explain all about what that means on the next few slides. After that, we will review the Illinois Assessment of Readiness data, which will be shared by both by demographic groups, so our student groups, as well as our grade levels. That is our assessment data for math and for ELA, so for literacy. And then the last piece that we'll talk about is what does this all mean for us for next steps? So let's start with the Illinois right-sized benchmark for proficiency. So this looks small on the screen, but I can explain it. So as you're looking at this, this has to do with where our state falls in comparison to others in the nation. So what you see from that blue arrow that's all the way down at the right-hand side is that is the state of Illinois. And so what we know and what Illinois has come to share with us, and we knew this from NAEP, is that we have our proficiency benchmarks were the most difficult out of all of the states. And so the conversations that were had at the state level is what does this mean for us? And how can we ensure that we are really measuring proficiency and proficiency of the state standards? So you'll see on some of the slides that are coming up, what was happening is that students were showing they were not proficient on the assessment, which was showing they weren't ready for college and career readiness, but yet they were still then outperforming students from other states. And so it just wasn't a fair comparison. Something important to know about NAEP, which is the National Assessment of Educational Progress, is that as a district, we are often chosen, districts are chosen to participate in NAEP. Our 8th graders are often chosen and to participate in that assessment. It's not an assessment that's done every year. We were chosen for this year. Our students from GMS will be participating. So some of that data in NAEP is actually about our district. So as I shared, the performance levels didn't match reality. So what this balance is showing is that, and that the state came back to share with us through their process, is that the ELA and math proficiency that they were expecting for students was too high. So what was happening was it was not showing where students were the match of did students really understand the state standards. So it was making it more difficult. And then for science, it was too low. So it was showing it was a little bit easier than what was happening in the classroom. So students might be proficient in a classroom, but not proficient on the assessment, on the state assessment, and then for ELA and math, and the opposite in science. So what they decided to do, and this is a little bit, I'll explain what all this means, it's very colorful. As we're looking at this, what ISB looked at was they created some new right-sized performance levels. And what you'll notice in those top 3 bar graphs is that when you look at the performance levels for the 3 assessments, so IAR, so the Illinois Assessment of Readiness, which is math and literacy, ISA, which is the Illinois Science Assessment, and SAT, which was the state high school assessment, all had different proficiency levels. They didn't align, and they all meant different things. So it wasn't giving us information that we could use to be able to look at growth over time, to be able to look at proficiency over time, and they couldn't be related. So what the state did is they went back and they said, so we need to look at our performance levels. You'll also notice in the top ones, they aren't even called the same thing. So you could have an approaching meets on IER and a developing on ISA, but they kind of don't really align, right? So you can see that part. So when you look at the bottom, they did two things. One, they looked at and created performance benchmarks that meet and match they all match, so we can look at the alignment. And they are all called exactly the same thing. So when we're looking at the names of them, and I'll show you the descriptions of them, those also mean the same thing. So what you're able to see on this is then anyone who's in green, who's in proficient or above proficient, those are our students that are counted as proficient. Anyone who's in that orange or yellow for approaching proficient or below proficient are not. Oftentimes the state talks about the approaching part as students that are kind of on that bubble. So many of those students are almost at that proficient level, but not quite. So here's, again, the description. What you will notice on this, and I'm not going to read all this to you, but what you will notice is that, and I'm going to start with that proficient one, which is the second one down, that's where we expect mastery from our students. So that if a student is reaching proficient, then what they are showing us is that they deeply understand the state standard for that grade level. And so it is giving us the opportunity, and you will see Illinois learning standards are in every single one of those categories. It's measuring the Illinois learning standards to show us what is the evidence that a student is prepared for academic demands for that next grade level. If I look at the above proficient, above that, and the row above that, that's showing us that students are ready for extension or have already started to extend or have started to show strong evidence that they not only can understand the proficiency of the standard, but they can go above and beyond that. When we start going down to that approaching, it's students who might need some additional support. They may not qualify for deep levels of support, but they might need some extra attention from their teachers in their classroom or during their intervention. And then that below proficient are students who have strong evidence that they need a lot more support. And so we want to look at, when we're looking at individual student scores, how do we anticipate and how do we start to think about what we need to do instructionally for our students? So this gives us those same 4 proficiency levels and performance levels mean exactly the same thing now for all 3 of those assessments. One of the other things that, I'm gonna go back to this one also, you notice in the top one it was SAT, this is high school, but you notice the top one was SAT, the bottom one is ACT. That's because the state assessment in high school for a short time was SAT. It's gone back and forth. It is currently ACT. Okay, so what does this all mean as we're looking at this? When we're looking at our performance levels and our proficiency, the performance levels are those ranges that are gonna give us that full spectrum of where do our students fall. Students receive cut scores based on their performance on the assessment, and I'll show you on the next slide. The cut scores then align with where proficient is, but it also aligns to each of these levels. So we know based on a student's score where they would fit on this spectrum. When we're looking at proficiency, again, that's showing us that students are on track for learning. And proficiency is telling us they are where they should be in that grade level. So here are those cut scores, and again, I shared with you that they were right sizing. So what it looks like on here, and I wanna make sure that I am really clear about, is it looks like for ELA and math, that those scores are going down, and it's making it easier. But the state was really clear about, because our proficiency cut scores were so high, they needed to make them so that they were where they should be in comparison to other states and in comparison to what it is we're really expecting kids to know and be able to do. So when we look at this, you will also notice the cut score was exactly the same for ELA and math in every grade level, 3rd through 8th grade. They have changed that so that the cut score changes by the grade level. This was a really long process that included lots of different stakeholders at the state level in order to change this. You'll also notice for science, and we're only going to talk about ELA and math data today, but you'll notice for science that they were also 799 went up to 812. Science is only taken in 5th and 8th grade. So we don't have as much data. So why does all this matter? So there's 3 different levels of why we would use this data. The state, or ISB, uses this to identify schools that might need additional support and to track progress of proficiency over time. So that's partially where they're using some of this information to help to identify what are some of the targeted schools that maybe need additional support from the state. In addition to that, at the school level, this is where we're using that data to improve teaching and learning for all of our students. So this data, we took this assessment in April. We just got the data a couple weeks ago. So I'm going to call it more of autopsy data because it's coming to us a little bit later, right? But it gives us a lot of information. We look at things like trends and patterns. We can dig down to say, is there a specific type of unit of instruction that students maybe are missing in a grade level? Might we continue to see patterns that there's a specific grade level that is showing that they're really high versus on a regular basis? So it gives us information to start to think about instructional programming versus individual student support because it's so much later. I mean, our 8th graders that took this last year have already been at the high school for a whole trimester. So we can't give them support anymore. They do get their scores though. And then the last piece of why this performance matters or these performance level matters is so that families can understand where their own students are in terms of learning. So we did send home the reports last week, so families were able to get those through Parent Square, so families were able to see where did their student fall. Again, gives us different information than some of the other assessments that we use. And I want to point out, this is not our data. This is state data. But what this slide shows us is under the new benchmarks, where is the proficiency, performance proficiency, where does that lie for each grade level? The blue is ELA, so the English Language Arts or literacy data. And when you look at that literacy data, the majority of the grade levels are hovering around 50% of students are proficient at each of the grade levels. This also goes all the way up to grade 11. We only need to look to 8. Math shows a little bit lower. So as a state, that is an area that the state is working on in order to improve math instruction. An Illinois literacy plan came out a couple of years ago. The state is currently working on an Illinois numeracy plan. And I actually went last night on a listening tour where they were asking for feedback on the first draft. So the state is also identifying that math is an area of need. So what else do we want to know before we start to get into our data? So let's talk a little bit about proficiency versus growth. So proficiency is about what is it we want our students to know and be able to do. So that is really about looking at the standards. What is it the standards are asking us to teach? And how will we know if our students are successful and have met that standard? On the other hand, when we're looking at growth, we're looking at measuring progress over time compared to other students. So we use, and I'll talk about MAP in a little while, but we use MAP to measure student growth over the course of a school year. The state looks at looks at growth a little bit differently, and you can see here they have both cohort growth and baseline growth. So what they're looking at, and there are lots of graphs that we can share, but there are graphs that are showing when they started looking at baseline data as a state, and what did the growth look like? They're shifting to the right. ELA shifts way more to the right than math does, but it's showing that students are making growth since they started collecting that data in 2019. So think about when 2019 was. So yes, we want to see growth. The other piece is the importance of the growth is that it's showing where the gains are happening. So we can look at individual student data. That growth piece is also part of how right now the school designations are identified. That's one piece of it. So when we look at this, I want to talk a little bit about the school designations, what they mean, and how does this impact us. So there are a couple different pieces to that. As I said, growth is a part of that. When we look at school designations, I want to remind you what those school designations are. So the top is exemplary. Something to note, I guess, also about school designations is this is the last year that school designations will exist as they currently do. The state is working on changing the designation process. And a piece of why they're doing that is because currently exemplary is only the top 10% of schools rather than just criteria. And what they've been talking about is that it should probably be more, if I've met criteria, even if I'm not in the top 10%, that we could be exemplary. So something they're working on, they will be sending us more information as soon as we get that, as soon as they start to create more of that. I think they've just started working on that. But again, that exemplary is that those are the schools performing in the top 10% of the state. Commendable is a wider range of schools. Both exemplary and commendable have no student groups underperforming. So that's the biggest difference between exemplary and commendable, is whether you're in the top 10% of the state or not. Targeted is really where those schools in which one or more of those student groups is performing below the level of the all students group. And comprehensive is then those schools that are in the lowest performing 5%. So, time for some celebration. All of our schools are in that commendable or exemplary range. So we have one school in exemplary and the rest of our schools are in commendable. And as I shared, that's a huge celebration. That means we have no student groups that are underperforming. And so we definitely want to celebrate that. Yeah, thanks, Christy. So that is something that we continue to look at and continue to see how did we perform. So let's talk about the actual data from the assessments. So I want to remind you what we're assessing. So the first piece, remember that these are assessments for our 3rd through 8th graders. Kindergarten, 1st, and 2nd, obviously everything they're doing in kindergarten, 1st, and 2nd is preparing our students for that, so they definitely play a role in this. But our students starting in 3rd grade are the ones that are taking the assessment. The English Language Arts Assessment is a literacy assessment. It is not just a reading assessment. It is 51% of their score is from writing. And so it's asking students to write about what they've read. It's asking them to compare multimedia to passages. Oftentimes it's multiple passages and multiple types of multimedia. We saw a 4th grade example that had, there was a passage that the students read, they watched a video, and then they also had to read an interview with the author. And they had to write about all of that and compare and analyze. So it's pretty in-depth, but it's drawing on experiences and what they know based on the standards in that grade level for both fiction and nonfiction. There's also vocabulary. There's basically every type of literacy standard that's out there is going to be assessed on this on the ELA portion. Math also has portions that are written. So it's asking students to think about and apply what is it that they've learned based on those math standards, and then to explain their thinking. So if we think about traditional math assessments that many of us took, I'm not going to date anyone else but myself, but when I took math assessments, it was a lot of just a lot of rote math, right? I needed to know formulas, I needed to know how to solve something, and that was it. Now it's really asking students to apply their knowledge to real world problems and be able to write about why did I solve it this way and how did I solve it. So it's more than just being able to solve it. So that's partially, I think, where some of that math is coming into this. We know that we've been working on math, and that's where our new resource came in. We've already started to hear and see some things there. And I'm going to give you an example in a minute. So as we talk about the student groups, these are all celebrations as well. As we look at our student group data, you'll notice the yellow, again, is the below proficient and approaching proficient. And then the green is shows the students that were proficient and above proficient. So it has it just broken in two. I will share this, the school report card didn't used to break it down like this. It now does. So new features as well, school report card. So as we look at this, we can celebrate the majority of these were above the state and all hovering right around there. You know, I think this is where we're looking at, are we providing equitable instruction for our students, and what do we need to do maybe differently as we're having some of those conversations about programming. Here's math. As I shared previously, math is an area of growth for the district, something that we're working on, but I do think that everything that we are doing in terms of math instruction right now and engaging our students in math discourse with each other, having the conversations. I was in a math classroom yesterday where students were standing in pairs at the board solving problems, explaining it to each other. So that is right there, how we're doing some of that. In addition to that, I'm going to share an example that Dr. Glickman gave to me today. She was here at Frederick, and there was a 5th grader in the hallway. Correct me if I get this wrong, Dr. Glickman, but there was a 5th grader in the hallway talking to a friend about the interval between 14 months between him and used that term between him and his siblings. So that's mathematical language. That was applied in the hallway, having a conversation. So we like to celebrate those things. So we know what we're doing in the classroom is then starting to apply to our students. This slide shows us our grade level proficiency. You know, we notice here again, we can celebrate in most cases, we're above the state or right with the state. We do notice, and one of the things that we've looked at and started having some conversation about is the drop between 6th grade and 7th grade. So it's something that we're continuing to have some conversation. What's happening in instruction, again, this is where we're then having some conversation about how there's a lot of writing on this assessment. So how deeply are we having our students engage in writing? We have performance descriptors that are given to us that we're looking at to be able to help to guide some of our instruction, and it gives us examples of how students might be assessed. So we want to give students opportunities to do the same thing. So we've been breaking that apart too in terms of the standards. Math proficiency, again, we can celebrate. We are right around either hovering or above the state. And so again, we know this is an area that everyone needs to work on, but we are seeing improvements, and we are looking at how we're seeing improvements in our students in the classroom. And so we know we're focusing on the right things, especially with that new math resource we have. Okay, so usually when I do this in January, I have our winter map data, NWA data to share with you. We haven't taken winter map yet because it's too early. So I just want to talk a little bit about the difference between NWA, which is MAP, and IAR. We will look at our MAP growth. Students will be taking that at the beginning of December, so in just a few weeks. We will be spending our December half day digging into that data and having conversations at this building level so that they can start to look at students and are they making the growth that they should. One thing to note is that they are measuring different things. So when we look at and have different purposes, right? So when we look at our NWA MAP data, it is measuring more reading comprehension and vocabulary. It does not have a writing portion. So we can't measure the writing piece of it that I've talked a lot about for IAR, But it does allow us to see with grade level passages, are students able to master the standards in that way related to just reading a passage and answering related to vocabulary or syntax or anything that they need to infer, analyze, still within that while they're not writing. So still gives us information. The other piece with NWEA is previously they did a linking study to show how it aligned to IAR. Well, when the state shared the new proficiency levels in August, NWEA came out and said, given that the state just finished this, we don't have the linking study yet. So they're working on that right now. They tell us that we should have it by the end of the year. That is how in the past we were able to see how did their NWEA scores align to IAR. So we should have those in the spring to be able to start to look at that again, because that did give us really important information. We use MAP a lot for growth, and I'm going to show you a graphic in a second to kind of talk about that. But the other piece that's different is, again, when we're looking at IAR, we're looking at that proficiency, we're looking at where we are and compared to the state, but we're looking more at cohort and baseline growth than we are individual student growth. So big differences between NWEA and IAR. But I want to talk a little bit about the growth piece. So if you, I don't know if this will work, it might. Low proficiency and low growth. If we have students who are low proficiency and low growth, that means we need to do something different to meet their needs. If we, however, had students who are low proficiency and high growth, then those are students that we know are starting to close those gaps and they're getting what they need. We just need to continue to raise their proficiency scores. So that growth gives us a lot of information as instructors to be able to look at what are we doing within the classroom. And that's how we use MAP to be able to help us. MAP does break everything down by, it actually has a portion on it that you can look at a student, individual student, and you can choose the standards. And you can either choose by topic or standards. Most of us go to standards, and it will break it down to the depth of what standards does the student need developed versus introduced versus enriched. So we can get that depth of knowledge from our MAP data to be able to help with that growth. Okay, so lots of data. What does that mean? Data's only as good as what you use it for, right? So this is helping us to think about, and I talked about this already a little bit, but how do we focus on instruction and planning through an equity lens? So what are we doing in order to ensure that all of our students are receiving exactly what they need? And are they receiving the right programming? Are they receiving the right intervention? What do each individual student need in order for us to provide them that instruction so that they can make that growth? It's also, we are continuing to look at that standards-based instructional planning. So when I talked about those performance level descriptors, those are given to us from the state, and it breaks it down by every topic and standard that's on the assessed status on IAR to say, here are samples of what it looks like, but here's also what success criteria looks like. And so then our teachers are able to start to have some conversation about, okay, these are the standards I'm expecting proficiency of in my classroom. How do I make sure that I'm really looking for the right things when I'm looking for proficiency? So it's giving us, and we're having a lot of conversations about that. We're also having conversation about student data on a regular basis. So teams are coming together and having conversation about classroom performance, and as well as looking at that district level data, but they're looking specifically at data to say, what do students need in that intervention period? So I might be pulling a group to do some extension if students are already mastering something and already showing they're proficient, but I also might be pulling a group to say, you know what, you're struggling with this specific skill, and here's how we're gonna support that. So that's all happening. And then, like I said, in December, we're gonna look at MAP data again too and see where are students making the growth that they need to make. As we're looking at this, we're talking about high leverage instructional practices. What is it that our students need? How are we as instructors learning and growing to be able to provide students that high level of instruction in the classroom? And then we're having conversation about transition in instructional practices. So talked a little bit about math, and I want to think about one of the things that we're having conversations about is, and I saw some of this at one of the schools earlier this week, was about student-centered instruction versus teacher-centered instruction. And so what does that look like, and how does that impact? So we're helping our teachers to kind of make that transition. Math has been a huge transition for some of our teachers. So thinking about what does that look like and how do we support them. And then we continue to have planning and design teams, so our committees, our PDTs. We have a PDT that is focusing on culturally responsive teaching and leading practices. We have already been talking about K4 and made a lot of changes to that K4 standards-based report card. We are starting at 5.8 to have that conversation this year. So what does that look like? What does that sound like in order to help us to be able to be really standards focused? Okay, so we did all three of these things. We talked about, or I shared with you the right sizing of the proficiency benchmarks, showed you our data, and we talked a little bit about some of the next steps. So with that, I open it up for questions.
Thank you, Mrs. Gluck, very much. I'll open it to the board for questions or comments. Mrs. Miller? Go ahead.
Thank you for that deep dive. So appreciate it. I have 3 questions. We looked at 2025, but I'm interested in the trends over the last 3 to 5 years. So what do those show, and how do we interpret them given the changes in the benchmarking?
Yeah, so one of the first things the state told us is don't compare.
Okay, good to know.
Yeah, they said it's really difficult to compare because the proficiency levels are so different, that's why they even took that off of the school report card as well. So if you go to the school report card, it only shows 2025 now, where in the past you could click on all of them. It does have archived historical data, but with the different proficiency levels, we can't see that. One of the things that I did do as I was looking at some of the data was I did try and look at some cohorts of students just to see where they compared to the state. So like I looked at some of our 7th graders when they were in 6th grade to see did they still compare to the state in the same way. I mean, based on what the state is telling us, even that's not really accurate, but so, you know, we're trying to see overall our students growing. I think right now MAP is going to help us to still be able to do that, and we can look at our MAP trends to continue to do that.
Great, thank you. Second question is, just generally, where are the bright spots? What are you seeing, and how can you tie those to the investments we've made in instruction? Like, what are you excited about?
Yeah, we've been focusing a lot on small group instruction. And I think that has been something that we are seeing the impact of. And it's not just small group instruction during core, during literacy instruction or math instruction, but it's also how we're using that intervention time. I think we're meeting the needs of more of our students at the higher end as well as the lower end where students need more support. Which is really important because one of the things that we had noticed previously is that our students that were already scoring pretty high proficiency weren't making as big growth, as large amounts of growth, as our students who we were spending more time on who were struggling. And so that is one of the areas that I think is making an impact then overall because students are going to continue to show proficiency and growth in that way.
Thank you. Okay, last one. So this one focuses on IAR data, mostly ELA and math. But if I'm a parent watching, my question probably, or at least mine was as a parent, is how is my whole kid doing? So I think I understand that this data is part of the school report card. So is that where you would advise parents to go for more holistic
Yeah, I mean, they're not going to find everything on there, right? So if you go to the school report card, you will see information specifically about science. You'll see more about our 5 essentials data. You will see about our attendance data, chronic absenteeism, those kinds of things. I think that there are pieces that that won't show up there, but are still. You can get a better picture overall.
So like fine arts
Yeah.
hasn't changed, it's still 100%.
Fine
We all
art-
have
so fine arts-
participation rates.
Yeah, so fine arts is just showing us participation rates. The one area that isn't necessarily measured, it's measured some from our 5 essentials data, but it's really that social emotional learning
And if I'm interested in climate literacy, that's going to be embedded in the,
in science.
okay.
Yeah.
Thank you very much.
Mr. Weedman?
Sorry, I think you might have already answered the question, but it's about the cohorts.
Yeah.
You said you listed in 7th and 8th grade, we see a dip in the ELA, right? Was that cohort, which 5 years ago would have been kindergarten, 1st grade, is that been their trend all the way through? Or because now you're not going to be able to really tell because the standards have changed?
Right, so I can't really tell for sure because the proficiency levels have changed. However, when I went back to look, so if we look at the 7th graders from last year, so 2 years ago with the old proficiency levels, they would have been 6th grade. They were showing that they were above the state at that point, but I don't know how that compares then using these cut scores and these proficiency levels.
Okay, so it could be a need to change instructional ways in those grade levels separately than everything else.
Yeah, I mean, it could be. And I think that's partially, even before we had this data, we're continuing to talk about how do we support literacy instruction in terms of writing, in terms of looking at the standards. And we really have been digging into those performance descriptors this year to be able to help us to have a better understanding.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Mrs. Nash?
Thank you so much for the presentation. It was a lot of information that you covered, and one of the things that came to mind for me as part of the right sizing effort, when I look at the proficiency numbers, while in most cases we're ahead of state, I know we're always challenging ourselves to grow, right? And so
Yep.
as part of the right sizing effort, has there been any conversation about like what our North Star is as a state or as a country when we look at all,
That's a great question. And I went to a lot of webinars with the state in order to really understand the right sizing. One of the things that they spent a lot of time talking about at the state level was just around ensuring that piece that students, regardless of what school you went to, if it said what was happening was there were students, and it was more high school level, but there were students who were showing, they were saying not proficient on the state assessment, and that meant they weren't going to be college or career ready. But yet they were still getting accepted to great schools. And so that was one of the things, if they decided to go the college route. And that was one of the things that the state wanted to right size, was to make sure that we were providing students college and career readiness and giving students and families accurate information related to their college and career readiness. I think when I look at our data, and we have this conversation, we actually just had this conversation earlier today, is around how, it's great to be above the state, but are we okay with, in some cases, having less than 50% of our students proficient? And so those are the conversations we're having of how do we increase proficiency to ensure that our students are getting exactly what they need. And it's more than just a state assessment, it's about learning. And they have, kids have one chance at each grade level. So how do we make sure they are proficient on the standards for that grade level before they leave that grade level and go to the next one?
Any other questions? Nope. Okay. Thank you, Mrs. Gluck.
You're welcome.
Okay, that brings us to the board report section of the agenda this evening, and I'll start down on this end this time with Mrs. Hune. No board, okay. Ms. Alvarez, okay. Mrs. Nash, okay. Okay, all right. Well, I went to the Choral Fest a couple of weeks ago and to the fall choir concert for GMS, and I just want to congratulate the choir and the staff and the teachers and everything. It was beautiful for the fall. That's all I have. Mrs. Miller?
Yeah, I have two. First, I wanted to make you aware the Community Engagement Committee is running a food drive, and thank you, Dr. Glickman, for nudging us on that. She reached out, and I want to call out Andrea Young. She is running the food drive and has been running the food drive, and she is particularly talented at this. She's talented at many things, but one of the things she does really, really well is she goes every Monday and she gathers a group of people and she talks with our township supervisor, Michelle Bohm, and Michelle often reaches out to the clients to ask them what they need. And Andrea has been very insistent that we not just provide things that we want to provide or we think they need, but really making sure that we go out and ask the clients what they want. So if you are interested in participating in the food drive, boxes will be at each one of our schools. I believe most of them will be in the foyers, but I'm not positive. I think so. So you can just drop food right in those boxes, and on Friday, CEC volunteers will pick up the food and drop it off to the Avon Township Food Pantry for our families, especially those who are impacted by the SNAP changes. So that's the first thing, the food drive. Also, I attended 2 virtual workshops about immigration law. I just wanted to understand the law, not only as it pertains to schools, but as it pertains to our communities. One of them was just particularly helpful in helping me untangle the competing narratives that we have about immigration right now. So I wanted to bring it to your attention because the group is called Immigration Connection, and their mission, I'm just going to read it, is to ensure greater access to high-quality, low-cost immigration legal services across the U.S. And they would be willing to come to our board meetings and do a presentation about immigration law. Again, not only as it pertains to school-specific scenarios, but as it pertains to our community. I think it'd be valuable for a couple different reasons. Most importantly, because it would help us provide a venue where people could watch to untangle the narratives, the competing narratives that we have in the media right now. And we also have committed to equity training, annual equity training, and I think it could check that box for us, and we could do it together. So they would be willing to come. If you'll have an email in your inbox tomorrow, just tell me if I should find out more information or not, but I can come back with more if we're interested in doing that as a board. And that's my board report.
Thank you, Mrs. Miller. Mr. Weedman?
No, I apologize for being late. I had transportation issues, so
No worries.
I'm here.
All right. Thank you. That brings us to the superintendent's report, and I'll hand it over to Dr. Glickman.
Thank you. Jim, we're glad you're here. Board, as you know, I'm a part of the executive board for CEDAL. That's our special education cooperative. Excuse me. And CEDAL is in the process of seeking a new superintendent to begin next school year. So I've been a part of that search. So I've been pretty deeply engaged in interviewing candidates for that. We have some more interviews to be doing next week, and hopefully it'll get wrapped up this next week. And thank you, Dr. Mack. I know you've also given time for that as well, so thank you for that. Yep. This week, our calendar committee met for the first time this school year. I believe we met a little earlier than we usually do because we really wanted to get a calendar out. We don't have a calendar ready to present to you yet. We have drafted one, but we need to check to see if it needs to be tweaked. And we'll know that, first of all, after we are able to see a draft or a completed 127 calendar, because board, as you know, we endeavor to match our calendar as closely as we can to 127's calendar, at least as far as our winter breaks and spring breaks go, and we don't have that calendar yet. We're also going to be considering our parent-teacher conference schedule for next year, so once we are having that all wrapped up, we'll have an actual draft to share with you. We're hoping we may be able to bring one in December, but if not December, January. In the meantime, we do have something that we can share out. which is the start of the school year. I think people have been really waiting for what's that date because there's been a lot of back and forth. Board, you remember, we had, excuse me, initially communicated out during the 24-25 school year that 26-27 would start a year later than usual. That was, what am I saying? Wow, be awesome. But I appreciate that you're listening so carefully. You do listen. All right, let's try that again. The 26, we had shared that the 26-27 school year would be starting a week later than usual. That was based on the recommendations we had gotten from our architects at the time. Then, as you know, we've hired a construction management firm. They have looked at our needs and recommended, actually, no, you don't need to do it a week later. Am I saying it right? Yes. And our architects agree based on some changes in our plans. So we're able to open as usual in 26-27. So we do have dates. The school year will start for staff on Monday, August 17th, and we'll start for students on Wednesday, August 19th. We will share that out through our district newsletter at the next issue. And again, as soon as we have a fuller draft, we'll be sharing it with you. Before I hand it over to Mrs. Gluck, I do want to welcome our 4 students. I think you're all from Central, is that right? We know that you're so excited to be here for our board meeting, but I'm guessing you have a class assignment you're doing as well, is that correct? All right, well, we're glad you're here. Did any of you go to school in District 46? You all did? Oh, very cool. Well, we're glad you're with us tonight. All right, I'm going to hand it over to Mrs. Gluck to talk about Navigate.
I will, this is a lot shorter than what I just shared. So, hello again. I'm going to talk a little bit about Navigate Lake. And that was something that our 8th graders, all of our 8th graders, so both from Park and GMS, attended the morning of October 22nd, so just 2 weeks ago. And it was held at the Lake County Fairgrounds. The purpose of Navigate Lake is it's put on by the Regional Office of Education, along with some businesses in the area. And it allows students, and it's for 6-12, they separate typically the high schoolers from the middle schoolers as kids are going through. But it's connecting students with tactile realities of their chosen career pathway. So there's booths that are set up, kids can walk around, they can see what some careers look like and have conversations with potential employers in our communities. And it's also a way for students to identify courses that might align with their pathway when they get to the high school. And so then they can start to think about what courses do they want to take soon. In the even starting next year. And so students do, prior to going, all of our students completed a career assessment that aligned with their interests. And so from that, they were able to start to learn about some career sectors and clusters together, and then they were able to go to Navigate Lake and learn all about their interests. It's pretty cool.
Thanks, Mrs. Gluck. And I'm going to hand it over to Mr. Wildman. He's got good news to share with us regarding debt certificates.
Thank you. The district successfully completed the financing of our general obligation debt certificates, what we're calling the Series 2025. Following confirmation of our AA credit rating from the Standard & Poor's Global Ratings, the district held the sale on November 4th, resulting in a successful issuance of $17 million in debt certificates. According to our underwriters, investor demand was strong, allowing the district to secure favorable rates and achieve interest savings of just over $250,000 compared to the original estimate. So what was presented on September 17th by Liz Hennessy from Raymond James, we went from 24.1 million to $23.8 million of the total costs over the 20 years to borrow $17 million. So with the entire market being what it is, we were really happy with that. And the money will be received by the district on December 2nd.
Thank you, and that's the end of the superintendent's report for tonight.
Thank you, Dr. Glickman. That brings us to the consent agenda portion of the agenda tonight. So I need a motion to approve this evening's consent agenda, which also includes the personal addendum that was sent to us earlier today.
I'll move. Second.
Okay?
Braden?
Aye.
Nash?
Aye.
Hune?
Aye.
Halverson?
Aye.
Miller?
Aye.
Mack?
Aye.
And Weedman.
Okay, thank you very much. We do have 3 action items today. These were ones that were discussed, but we're voting on this evening. First, I need a motion to approve the fiscal year 2026 school maintenance project grant.
I'll move.
I'll second.
Okay. Okay.
Weedman?
Aye.
Miller?
Aye.
Mack?
Aye.
Nash?
Aye.
Braden?
Aye.
Hune?
Aye.
Halverson?
Aye.
Okay, motion approved. Second, I need a motion, please, to approve the contract extension with Durham Transportation for the 2026, 2027, and 2027, 2028 school years.
I'll move.
I'll second.
Okay?
Hune?
Aye.
Braden?
Aye.
Halverson?
Aye.
Miller?
Aye.
Mack?
Aye.
Weedman?
Aye.
And Nash?
Aye.
Okay, motion approved. And finally, I need a motion to approve the revised board meeting calendar for 2025, 2026.
I'll move. I'll second.
Okay?
Halverson?
Aye.
Mack?
Aye.
Braden?
Aye.
Hune?
Aye.
Miller?
Aye.
Nash?
Aye.
And Weedman?
Thank you, motion approved.
Dr. Mack,
We.
can I just,
We, yes. Go ahead, Mrs. Miller.
I wish I could just pull out my French quickly and
French class,
respond to
yeah.
you, but here we go. Just a note to remember to add Jason and Trent to the distribution list for the change of the meeting date, because I
Yes.
think that's a finance date too.
That's a finance date, okay. Okay, it's got it, okay. Okay, under our unfinished portion of the agenda, we do have a discussion about the K4 security camera project with Forward Edge. Mr. Wildman?
Thank you. As part of the district-wide safety and security improvement efforts, the technology and the operations and maintenance departments have been collaborating closely, aligned with the work of our safety and security committee and the district technology plan. Security cameras are one key layer in a multi-layered approach to campus safety. Over the past 3 years, we've successfully completed upgrades at Grayslake Middle School, Park Campus, and Frederick School. The Maintaining Excellence referendum approved in March of 2024 included funding to continue the upgrades at our remaining K4 buildings. The current camera systems in these schools are technologically obsolete and very limited. New systems will provide comprehensive coverage and centralized monitoring capabilities. The district plans to continue its partnership with Forward Edge, which successfully completed the previous installations. We've received a quote of about $359,000 and change, $14.45 for hardware, software, and installation of 137 cameras across the 4 K4 school buildings. The project will result in all district camera systems being integrated under a single management platform for efficiency and consistency.
Thank you, Mr. Wildman. We do have 2 items under new business this evening. The first one is student fees. Is that Mr. Wildman again?
Yeah,
Back to
sorry,
you.
I don't know why I stopped. Okay, so each year the school board reviews and approves the fee structure for the upcoming school year in advance of registration. Tonight's discussion provides an overview of the current fees and administrative recommendations for the 26-27 school year. So I'm going to walk through the 4 key areas, and if you follow in your memo, you might see some repetition, but I'll try and not to just repeat the entire memo. So first of all, we have student registration and technology fees. These were last increased 7 years ago in 2019, 2020, where we introduced, and in 2021, we actually introduced a $50 fee for technology for a one-to-one devices. The district has a $25 discount if fees are paid by May 31st, and that was previously July 15th, but we moved it last year. And we have a refund policy if a student withdraws before January 1st, the 50% of the fee is given back. The recommendation from the administration is to keep registration technology fees unchanged for the 2026-2027 school year. Unchanged. Next, we have student extracurricular fees. So this is one of the things we had was the cross-country. That would be one that would have a fee. So we have like $175 for major sports, $120 for musical, just giving you a couple of examples. The recent board focus in 2023-2024 is that we explored alternatives to this current structure. And at that time, we didn't make any changes. We're continuing to keep that unchanged recommendation to keep extracurricular fees unchanged for 2026-2027 in recognition of our current financial realities and what we believe is to maintain accessibility, current accessibility. And then we have preschool tuition and transportation. This relates directly to our preschool for all students who are not accepted under the Preschool for All grant and don't have a special education IEP. The tuition is $250 per month, and that gives them access to 4 days a week. And additionally, if they're able to, we don't add routes, but if they're able to be added to a route, they're able to pay $52 a month, and they're added to a route as well. But we don't, only if we can add them onto an existing route. And the recommendation from the administration is to maintain current rates for 26-27. And then finally, we have facility rental fees. The district's facilities are made available to community groups, reflecting CCSD 46 commitment to community engagement. We do have 2 intergovernmental agreements with the Grays Lake Park District, and we have one with the Round Lake Park District for Park Campus, and we don't charge them for any use of our buildings. So that's not included in this. This is any other groups outside of that. We are recommending maintaining the current fee structure for 26-27.
Thank you, Mr. Waldman. Any questions, comments?
I have a question.
Mrs. Nash?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Waldman, for the overview. Quick question. I can't remember, do we offer payment plans or augmented pay structures for the sports?
We do offer payment plans. They're usually when a family is falling behind in payments, so we don't always offer them up front. But if a student and a family does fall behind, before we do anything, we reach out to the family to actually find out what's happening, and we do offer a payment plan at that point, yes.
Okay. Would it be a bit of an overreach, and I apologize I didn't send this to you in advance, but just thinking through, just given our economic climate, right, and all the challenges facing our families, I'm glad to hear that rates and fees are going to remain unchanged. I'm just wondering if we can have or consider rather, a more proactive approach in articulating options to families, because some people may shy away. You'll sign up, and then just to avoid make it one less thing I have to worry about trying to come up with a lump sum. If we could just say, hey, kind of like we recognize all the varying things, and you can pay in one lump sum, or you got the option to pay over 3 months, or just something to just be a little bit more proactive, recognizing everything. And I'm not asking for you to solve for it now. It's just something that came to mind.
I am aware that there is quite an active amount of conversation and communication between families and the registration, and the registrar. In that, if there are individuals, families who are struggling to pay, let's just talk about the registration fee and the technology fee, we immediately reach out. So that's kind of straight away.
Yep.
If an individual, if a student can't afford and that parent can't afford to pay for the extracurricular, we do offer a waiver at a per building, so the principals do have the discretion to help out as well. That's listed in the memo as well. So we talked about that back in 23-24, and we wanted to continue that because we give a little bit of building autonomy. In terms of just generally offering it, it's just difficult because it's a platform, And we want to obviously collect as much money as we can from those individuals as quickly as we can, because we just do. Because if we don't collect it I have to collect it through another way, which is
Sure. Yeah,
usually
I
through
get that part.
collections and all that other stuff. So we do offer it, but it's not an automatic thing all the time. That's probably the best answer I can give you
Okay.
right now, but I can give you more
Oh, that's
information if you need
helpful,
it.
thank you, and I appreciate it off the fly.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Wildman. Any other comments or questions? No? Okay, and the final item for new business is the IASB resolutions. Is this where we're doing the delegate thing? Yes. So I'm the delegate. And the topics, yes, I don't think I had those with me. That's what it was. Okay, and we were going to figure that there was only one resolution, I believe, this year, correct? So let me open that one up here because I didn't have it on the computer here. Yeah. Okay, so the topic, and I don't have it, what page is it on for this one? There's the articles of change for the Constitution, and all those amendments are being recommended to be accepted, so that should be pretty straightforward. And one of my colleagues in Wakanda is going to be at the delegate assembly as well. And so this is the first time that I'm doing the delegate, so with one resolution, that's going to be nice, I guess, I suppose, although they assume that it's going to still go long. That's what I've been told. Okay, so those first parts of the resolution document are the amendments, which I believe is going to automatically pass through everything. The one resolution, and I'm having a hard time finding it, the resolution for consideration before the thing is the school bus safety funding. That is the one that is up. The statement of the resolution is the committee is recommending adoption of the school bus safety funding, and I believe we talked about this once before, but the district rationale for it is the 2025 enactment of a Senate bill that it's requiring all newly acquired school buses to include lap and shoulder belts, but provides no state appropriation for that added expense. So the current vendor quotes show that belts add about $7,000 to $18,000 per bus, per vehicle for that safety, but a disproportionate burden for the rural and the low EAV districts that can only replace 1 or 2 buses per year. So the idea behind the resolution is the fiscal relief or the additional time smaller districts will have to divert limited dollars away from education in order to take care of the fleet. Okay. So a needs-based grant paired with a narrow waiver window is the basis for the resolution, which ensures equity, fiscal responsibility, and then safety through the seatbelts. That is our resolution to consider.
I would be
For
in
or
favor of
against?
that.
Yeah, the Resolutions Committee does recommend do adopt, and I'm assuming that what they're looking for too as well, and I had discussed this with Laura, actually. I had reached out to her. So safety belts that all buses, all newly purchased buses by 2031 is what it would occur. Are we all in agreement on that one then? Then I will go with fidelity to, and no unfunded mandates, right, right. So I'll take that to the delegate. Do I need to be approved as the delegate? Was that already done? No. Okay. And you're the backup delegate? Okay, if I can't handle the one resolution. I have never been to that thing before, so somebody's gonna have to tell me where to go when I get down there. So we're gonna, yeah, I am vulnerable in that respect at this moment, so. I'm not sure I feel faith in you, but that's okay, I'm going in.
People couldn't hear
I'm
that.
going
We
in,
all feel faith
buddy.
in you, Dr. Mack. It will be fine. It'll be great.
All right, thank you. Do we have topics for future agenda items?
We do. We have another board meeting in November 19th. That one will be focused on finance. It will be one of our finance meetings. We've got 3 finance topics that evening: the audit, updated 5-year projections, also discussion of a 1% sales tax, something that boards across the county are talking about, trying to kind of see if people have an interest in pursuing that, and we'll explain more about that in 2 weeks. So those will be the discussions. We, of course, will do a few other things. First of all, it will be board appreciation. So we'll have a little board appreciation that night. We've asked to add, to include the approval of that K4 security camera project with Forward Edge, because we need to be able to move forward with that project. So that will come on there. And hoping that you're approving a new superintendent contract on November 19th, if you wrap up next week. Otherwise, that will bump into December. December 17th, our Park Campus Wolves will be coming, so we'll have some students here at the table. We'll have students presenting to us. It'll be a big park night because we're also going to have athletes that we're honoring. So we've got girls volleyball team coming. We've got girls cross country coming, and some boys as well, talking from their work at the cross country state. And we'll be approving bid awards for summer construction. Dr. Roque will bring the approval of the seniority lists. That's something we do annually. Mr. Webman will come back with the student fees again, so we'll be asking for approval for those student fees. And then, as I mentioned earlier, we are hoping we might have a 26-27 school calendar to show you, but if not then, it'll come in January. And that's it. Then we're in 2026.
Goes fast.
Yeah.
Okay, do we have any public comments signed up at this point? I don't think so. Okay, all right. We are going to enter into closed session, and then we'll stop and get a picture with you guys before you leave, okay? I need a motion to enter into closed session this evening in accordance with Public Act 5, Illinois CS 120/2, paragraph C1, the appointment, employment, compensation, discipline, performance, or dismissal of specific employees of the public body, or legal counsel for the public body, including hearing testimony on a complaint lodged against an employee of the public body or against legal counsel for the public body to determine its validity. I need a motion?
I'll move. I'll second.
Okay.
Yoon,
Aye.
Nash,
Aye.
Miller,
Aye.
Mack,
Aye.
Halverson,
Aye.
Weedman,
Aye.
and Braden.
Okay, great. We're going to go ahead and, after we do the picture, we're going to go ahead and move closed session. Thank you. Good night, everybody.